one of the things that I think is really important and actually validated with research is surrounding yourself with supportive people, and making your goals known to supportive people. And the supportive is a key word, okay? Because you can share your goals with the world on social media, and maybe that works for you and maybe it doesn't. But if you cue into some of the conversations that you might have with people as you're sharing your goals, you're going to figure out who you want to surround yourself with.
Welcome back, everyone, to Life at 10 Tenths, where we inspire you to live at the pinnacle of your ability and purpose. And today we have a really fun episode for you, because not only am I joined by my wonderful co-host Garrett Fry, as always, but we also have Julie Kaminski with us here, a fellow Charlestonian, which is so cool. And she is a board certified health coach, one of the very first to go through that certification 10 years ago. She's also a master's in psychology and brings this incredible perspective to health and wellness and mindset coaching. She's been doing it for a long time, and I think you guys are going to get some incredible takeaways from today's episode. Julie, welcome to the show. Good to see you.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here.
This is going to be a ton of fun. I mean, you have methods and all these different things. We're going to talk about goals. We're going to talk about, recovery. We're going to talk about health and talk about all these things that are so crucial to business. Garrett, good morning to you as well, sir.
Good morning. I'm really excited to be here today. This interview is going to be great because energy is what I'm always focusing on when I'm coaching people and working with people one-on-one. And so to have somebody here who has a much deeper understanding of the health side of that and why it affects the results that you get and where you can go and the goals you can achieve. This is right up my alley. So this is amazing. I'm super excited to see where we go today. And again, thanks for being here. So yeah, we should kick this thing off.
Let's dive on in. So Julie, I think the first thing that like a professional thinks about when we start to talk about health and mental wellness and all that stuff is like, man, I don't have time for that. Like, I got to focus on building my business, particularly now when I'm working on my business planning. Like, I got goals that I want to hit and everything like that. And that's going to come down to, how many calls I make, what I do in my business, how I can get more deals done. But it really does start with our health and our mindfulness as well. So when you're working with professionals, where do you begin to help get them grounded so that they can actually then direct focus into their business?
I start with an acronym that covers many of the elements that comprise what I call a healthy body and a happy mind. And the acronym is SAVOR, which interestingly enough is part of positive psychology. So it kind of fits really well with the work and where we start. So the S stands for sustenance, and that's how you fuel your body. How do you eat? What are your eating behaviors? We pretty much know that French fries on a daily basis probably are not healthy.
But we do know that. We do know that, but nobody actually like applies that into their life. So I appreciate that.
Yeah. But why are you eating them? So not only nutrition, but your eating behaviors. The A stands for activity, which is the physical component. And we do need to move our bodies to be healthy. We do. And as much as maybe you don't like running, a 5K, moving your body is important. So the A stands for activity. The V stands for variables, which are the medical and the genetic components. And I like to bring that in because we're different from the cellular level on up. So you might have blown out your ACL skiing, which means you're nuanced in that way and have to accommodate differently. Same thing that comes up with diagnoses that you don't necessarily want, but they do affect your overall picture. The O stands for organization, and that's the stress management aspect. And we all have stress. We all have it. we can have good stress, we can have bad stress, but we have to, life is stressful. So how are you dealing with it? And how can you deal with it better? What works for you? And then the R is one of my favorite, and that stands for refuelment. And that's where the positive psychology comes in. And that the R of the SAVOR acronym, is a great big focus, which I love to kind of dig deeper in with people. So when I work with clients, we take a lot of time kind of talking about all of those different elements and how they appear or don't appear in a person's life. And generally what kind of raises up from that are a couple of areas that are working well and not working, and how can we get those to work better?
Yeah.
Julie, when you are working with some, is there an area that you find the most that when you are kind of like, I know, and I appreciate that you say everybody's different, because we are all so different. I've got 3 kids, and I can, even them who have been raised in the same home, who have the same, genetic structures, we all know how that works. It's amazing to see how they handle things differently. Their body takes in food differently or resists different types of food. Is there an area in here when you're working with somebody that you're like, this is usually the most common place that there's a breakdown, like right up front for people that's stopping them from running at the best level they could?
Well, some of it is much more, I think, concrete when you think about, moving your body. And, some people just really don't like exercise. So you can kind of attack that in, I would say, a much more direct manner. What I think tends to come up is the presenting kind of, I'm coming to you for help with blah, blah, insert, is the underlying, which tends to rise up. And that's where I want to say that not so much the counseling, but the positive psychology comes in. And, it could be the messages that they're sending to themselves, which is really kind of interesting. When, I had a client and came in presenting with a desire to lose weight, but what was really underlying that was a message that she was sending to herself that she wasn't worthy of feeling good. So, pulling the layers back a little bit, what surrounds it, pulling the onion layers back, and you get to the heart of really where the work and the transformation is, the seed of it. The heart. So over the years, I would say, although we deal with kind of the holistic, the positive psychology aspect in dealing with, the underlying, and using those skills, using those techniques and those strategies.
Well, let's dig into that because, sorry, Garrett.
No, go for it, Matt.
I was gonna say, let's dig into that because I think, when we're in business planning season and people have this conscious side of them that's like, oh, I'm going to hit these big goals. It's really great and all these things. And they're able to shut off that non-conscious voice during the planning time. So they're able to set these big goals, but then when they kind of come out of that planning mode and into action, that non-conscious or subconscious voice kicks up saying like, well, you're not worthy of that. Like, you're not going to be able to do that. All of these I can't start to come about, even if they're not even said loudly. And so how do we start to reshape that positive psychology and kind of quiet that voice, or just restructure how that voice is talking to us?
Well, I'm so glad you asked, because there's theory behind this. So I like to say that self-care isn't selfish, it's actually strategic. And if you are in real estate and you're kind of the driver and goals and, accomplishment, bottom line, all of that is important. I can get, and I totally understand where that rises above self-care. But here's the kicker, is everybody's kind of familiar with the fight and flight. You go into fight and flight, it's survival, which is instinctual, and we need that. There is a flip side to it, which has been studied and validated, and that's called the broaden and build theory. When you experience positive emotions, you're able to broaden your perspective.
Yeah.
You're able to see more creatively. When you do that, you're also able to build relationships. So when you're experiencing positive emotions, when you're experiencing positive feelings, when you're taking care of yourself, you're able to think more creatively. You're able to connect with more people. You're able to be more resilient. What's the fallout of that? Transformation. That, and then it loops all the way right back around to broaden and build your success. So if you're driving, but not taking care of yourself, you're on the edge of burnout, kind of prioritizing those little things that are going to make a difference because the payout is proven. So
Yeah.
self-care isn't selfish, going for that 20-minute walk or taking, having somebody say prep your healthy meals for you, or taking a vacation, or thinking about the bigger picture. All of those kind of examples are strategic.
It's amazing when you watch somebody take action with that. They go from this place of blinders on, head down. They can't see any opportunity. They can't see the possibilities. They can't see the roads that are right in front of them. Where us, sometimes we're going like, it's right there. Like you're right there. And they just go, nope, I can't see it. I can't see it. And a lot of times it's because they're fatigued. They haven't been taking care of themselves. Matt, we've been talking a lot lately about the food we put into our bodies, the water we put into our body, all these things bring about this person that, Julie, I loved how you said that, which is like, you can see the opportunities around you. You can see the good around you when you put yourself into that state. And we've watched a lot this year. This year, I have found more people have been kind of drugged down just through life and politics and all kinds of stuff that I have found, like this year, I keep calling it the year energy. 2025 is the year of energy is what I keep saying. And so I love that you're going down this. So would you call it broaden and build? Is that what you call it?
Yeah, broaden and build. It's the complementary skill to fight and flight. Or if you think of, you need fight and flight, but let's balance the scale a little bit with the broaden and the build, and it's okay. In fact, it's good.
Yeah.
I like the complementary side. I never heard that, Matt.
Yeah.
I know. That's why I was like, wow, that's like, we always think, oh, we have this instinct to just fight, flight, all these things. It's like,
there's focus on fight or flight.
There's gotta be some other things that were instinctually there, right?
Well, the other thing, and I referenced it with the acronym that I use, SAVOR. SAVOR is actually kind of the partner skill to coping. We cope with stress. If I ask you, what are your coping skills? You probably can name them. If I ask you, what are your savoring skills? A lot of times people kind of, it's a head scratcher. But when and this comes from positive psychology, it's studied, it's validated. When you are able to sit with and acknowledge and get grounded in your accomplishments, whether they're big or small, and actually I'm a big believer in it's the small steps that we need to pay attention to, because those are the building blocks of the big ones. And the more you get in tune with the victories on the small scale, you're moving towards the big ones. So, when you talk about, complementary skills, savoring, those little wins. If you've made 5 cold calls and, acknowledging, okay, I made 5 cold calls today, that's a victory.
Yeah.
And then when you're able to do that, it grounds you in your skill to know that when you come upon a hurdle again, you have accomplished something. So, people who are able to savor have more of a thriving mindset and also are able to overcome hurdles a little bit easier.
That makes a lot of sense. That's one thing we started to include in our business planning last year, which we're carrying into this year, of course, is setting milestones on your journey. Because people will set a big goal for the year, whether it's an income goal or even if it's like an athletic goal. I'm going to run a marathon, right? and there's never any milestones in between. It's just like 0 and 100. And once I get to 100, I can, throw my hands up and say, "Yay, I did it." But there's also those steps along the way. Um, but comparison sometimes drips into this as well, right? Like we're reading a book right now called Money Unmasked by Garrett Gunderson, and he says in the book, he's like, in your portfolio, 30% return sounds amazing until you find out your neighbor has 34%, and then all of a sudden it's not enough. And so how do you help people deal with the comparison game, or just how do you reframe that? Because we know that sometimes comparison can be good to
Sometimes
fuel
comparison
us
can be
into
good.
action, but for the most part, it can also kind of rob us from those milestones, right?
Hmm. I think that's where you've got to, or if I were working with a client and, the idea of comparison, which I think is human,
Yeah.
is, maybe first of all, you frame it as human,
Hmm.
and then get into a little bit more of the intrinsic, a reframe on in why is this important to you, and kind of, okay, 34, that's great, but are you coming from 15 to 30? So a little bit of a reframe. And uh, when I work with clients, there's a lot of deep listening and then a lot of curiosity questions.
Uh-huh.
Um, and when we're in this kind of dance, and if you coach, when you're in that dance of the conversation and the questions and the listening, usually something arises.
Yeah, it's a really good point. I
Hmm.
think the reflection component, I think, becomes important. And so getting into kind of how you build that in, do you recommend people do like meditation? Do they have journaling periods? Like what are kind of some of the tangible habits that you see people deploy that help them stay in that kind of comparing to their own journey, being able to look at where they've come, experiencing the gain versus the gap. What are the habits that you have
Mm.
people execute on that?
Well, meditation is great. I'm not, but it's not for everybody. I mean,
Hmm.
meditation for me is like pulling teeth. So, but there are other
I'm
ways
with
that you can find, I tools to help you along the way. So it could be meditation. Uh, Journaling is very, very powerful, because there's a there's studies that say when you take something from your brain and you put it on paper, that experience subconsciously says this is important.
you.
Um, so that's why I'm a big believer in, writing your goals down,
Hmm.
keeping them posted where you can see them. Um, I think that there's a lot about goal setting that, I mean, we talked about it a little bit before we formally started, that that's pretty interesting, and uh, not always uh, uh, known.
Hmm.
And a lot of times people will set, maybe you'll have clients that set a lot of goals. I want to close 10 homes, or whatever the common real estate goals would be. And then maybe they want to run a marathon, or maybe they want to be a better parent. And what I try and do with clients is get them to get honed in on one or two that are important, and just check in that they're leveraged goals. And that might be something that is, you want to do a self check. So for instance, if you say I want to run a marathon, but I want to be number one in my office, training for a marathon is pretty time consuming. Being number one in your office is probably very time consuming. So what do you want to focus on, and why? And when you accomplish, an optimal goal, the natural fallout it's gonna radiate out to other things. So, getting people to really look at what are one or two important things that will kind of have this domino ripple effect.
Julie, when you talk about leverage goals, just so the audience understands, like what would a leverage goal look like, or what do you mean by a leverage goal? Leveraged goal.
Okay, so you don't want goals to be in competition with each other. So as I just mentioned, say you want to better your tennis game or your golf game, and that takes practice, but you also know that you've got 8 hours of work ahead. Well, those goals kind of compete with each other. So you're probably not going to be successful at either of them because they're in competition with each other, as opposed to, let's just say, you want to provide more for your family. Well, then selling 10 homes, that is, if you sell 10 homes, that's going to ripple out to providing better for your family. If you're providing better for your family, then maybe that allows you to take a vacation, and that vacation brings you together as a family, and you feel rested and restored. So you can kind of see how, if it's a leveraged goal and optimal, and all the other little really cool things that you can do with goal setting, it naturally leads into other really positive things.
Like stacking. It's like stacking goals that support one another to get you to where you want to go. So that's, I appreciate that. The other question I have for you is, Matt brought up the kind of celebrating along the way and, checking in on your goals. We talked about meditation and other things. Some people stop checking in on goals because sometimes they don't want to acknowledge where they're at right now. They almost feel like it's negative to say, well, I'm not anywhere near this goal. I have this health goal, this fitness goal, and I'm so far. Maybe it's a marathon, and it's like I can barely even run a mile right now, and I feel myself negatively focusing on I can barely get to a mile rather than this goal. How do you find the best ways for people to kind of keep themselves in check as they're moving towards building a stronger business, building a stronger life? Like, how do you help them do that?
Yeah. One of the things that I think is, there are different things. We talked about some of them, but one of the things that I think is really important and actually validated with research is surrounding yourself with supportive people, and making your goals known to supportive people. And the supportive is a key word. Okay. Because you can share your goals with the world on social media, and maybe that works for you and maybe it doesn't. But if you cue into some of the conversations that you might have with people as you're sharing your goals, you're going to figure out who you want to surround yourself with. So surrounding yourself with a supportive community and sharing your goals with a supportive community or supportive people is critical. And that was kind of an eye-opening moment in my own life, is when you share with people, how do they respond? And we could quickly kind of go into their four categories that have been studied. It's the active constructive, which is, that's great, tell me more. And that ideally is the response style that you're seeking. And and it's, I say this because it applies not only with goal setting, but I think, family wise is, in working in chatting with my children, I try and come at it from, that's great, tell me more, and on the flip side is the person who just kind of dismisses it and moves on, and that's a passive, or that's active destructive. And then there's the response style that is, oh, that's great, but let me tell you about me, which is kind of dismissive. And we've probably had those, and I can think about some. And then the final one is, that's kind of dismissing it, but then, saying, have you tried XYZ? And that can be pretty destructive too. So, and that's a tough one as a parent.
Oh, I love it. So who you surround yourself with. We have a joke in our household when my daughter went off to college and she called me crying from college. And she said, whoever thought this was a good idea? You knew how much I hated school. And I said, I'm not here to tell you how much you hated school. You said you wanted to go to college. So I
Uh,
made that work.
uh,
And
uh,
and I also like this dismissive thing I find in our world a lot today. Some people say I have a dream to go to Mexico, and the person they're talking to, well, let me tell you all about my trip to Mexico.
mhm, mhm.
And it's just like that you're not
Yeah.
helping me get to this journey. So um, I don't think we pay attention to enough to the people we surround ourselves with. And I also think that we think the people that sometimes are this active destructive, we feel like they're doing a good thing for us by having them like kind of like say like, oh, but have you thought about this? Have you thought about that? Are you really sure this is a good thing to go do? We feel like those people are watching out for us a lot of times, and we don't realize they're literally taking the wind out of our sails. So it's a
Well,
really it's a trap.
yeah. Well, I guess, in some ways, maybe you do want that, but it being, paying attention to, how are you reacting, yourself? Is this, has the person, do you feel support from the person? And then there's brainstorming, which, I think is different than a slight nuance to it. The other thing, as we're talking about community, which has also been studied, is the concept of social contagion.
Mhm.
And that is very, very powerful. If you want to sell more, surround yourself with successful salespeople. The number one predictor of obesity and smoking is who you hang out with. If you want to eat better and you're hanging out with friends who are going to McDonald's every day, chances are you're not going to have the success that you desire. So if you want to feel more joy, hang out with joyous people or find joyous people. So that all applies. And it's very human, I think, when you think about it. When somebody's going through a rough time or when somebody's stressed, you can probably feel it.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Well, they say misery loves company, right? And then
Hmm.
people start to pile on each
Yeah.
other. And it's
Yeah.
like, okay, misery does love company, but is that the company that you actually want to keep?
Right, right, right,
You know?
right. And if you're reacting, and I guess that's where, even in my own personal world is, you have conversations with people and you're like, you feel icky after, and you're weighted down and you were like, does that mean you can't, you avoid it all the time? No, but if you're kind of clued into, this is good energy.
Mhm.
And if
Julie,
you,
I keep thinking about running as you're talking about like who are you surrounding yourself with, because there's like I want to be a runner and I'm doing this by myself. It's my self journey on becoming a runner. And there's the other side of it of like, have you found a running group in town? Like it's amazing how much farther you're going to run on a weekly basis if you have a group of people that you're going to go out running with. Like there's a lot of science behind it.
yeah, there is and the beauty of something like that is, and it's not for everybody, so it's finding if it works for you, awesome. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to work for everybody. But the beauty in, say, that example of running a marathon and finding a running club is now you've got a little bit of accountability.
Mhm.
Now you're building relationships, and our social health is the importance of social health is gaining so much more traction in the last 5-10 years. And you go to the Harvard longevity study, and the number one predictor of longevity is social relationships, positive social relationships. So in that instance, when you're talking about a running club, hopefully you're getting some positive social relationships out of that.
Julie, you made a comment that I think is really interesting, which is it's one thing about who you surround yourself with. So we got active, constructive, active, destructive, dismissive, all these, but you also said it's how you listen to them. Like it's how you are also
Mm.
taking the information that they're sharing. And I think that this goes back to like the bigger picture we're talking about taking care of yourself actively, strategically taking care of your energy. allows you to hear what those people have to say also in a different way. Because we all know when we have a certain person in our life that they can come in with a constructive thought, and we take it as a like, leave me alone. Like, I don't need to hear that right now. And I think it's a, we don't give enough credit to how are we listening and how are we interpreting what the people are actually trying to say to us. I love that you said that. I don't know if we can unpack that anymore, but that really stood out to me.
So say that again for me, that how it resonates with.
How we interpret what others are saying. So you can have a let's say a active destructive person, let's say, but it also depends on how we are interpreting the information, how we're taking in the information. At least that's what I got from what you're saying. So, I think there's a piece there of accountability, self accountability, where you're not putting it all just on the people around you of who am I surrounding myself with, but also asking yourself, how am I listening to them? Is what came up for me. So,
Well,
I don't know.
I guess that is sometimes you step away from a conversation and then you have the aha moment. And then it's up to you how you want to deal with it. I mean, maybe it's just an off day. If it occurs 3, 4 times where you're walking away from an interaction with kind of that ick feeling, well, then, let's start to think about some strategies. And, I would love to say you can, carve that out and put it aside, but the reality is probably you've got some working environments where you're going to have to deal with somebody that doesn't necessarily vibe with you or where you're at or your works, and that's that's where you get into kind of some of the strategy, and I think that's in goal planning, and if this happens, then I will, which is this is what I love about positive psychology. It's a validated tool. It's an if-then statement. If this happens, then I will. If I encounter this interaction, then I will. And you have some action plans, or you've kind of thought about how you want to deal with the challenge before the challenge or as the challenge is occurring. And that's a validated tool, which is super cool.
I love how you highlighted that, because that's another thing that we brought into our business planning was looking ahead at roadblocks. Like we sometimes set goals and we put it into this vacuum of the perfect environment. I'm going to go run a marathon. It's going to be great. All my training days are going to be sunny. I'm going to feel good. My shoes are going to fit just perfectly. My favorite clothes are always going to be there. We forget, like, oh, I might get sick. It might rain, I might have somewhat of an injury or something like that, but we never plan for those things. But if we do, then it makes the goal so much more attainable and also so much more human as well. Because I think sometimes we'll say, "Oh, this happened, that means I can't do this goal," and we take the first thing that comes up that stands in our way, and we say, "Well, that's a sign that I shouldn't go and pursue this," when in reality, it's no, that's what life is, right? This is part of the journey, and that's how we actually grow
Right.
stronger.
Yeah.
Um,
And there's, if your community is interested, there's another tool that I use is the WOOP acronym, and that's WOOP, which if you go and you look it up, they have a free app, and it stands for Wish, Outcome, Obstacle, Plan. So what is your wish? What is your goal? What's the outcome of if you accomplish your goal? So that's the intrinsic part there. Your goal, why it's important, what are your potential obstacles, and what's the plan when they arise. Okay.
I love that.
So wish, outcome, obstacle, plan, WOOP. And it's a strategy that's used in many different life circumstances, in diet and exercise, in sales. It's pretty interesting.
I
So
love it.
planning for life's inevitable obstacles, and you're going to have obstacles. That's life.
Yep. You can't get through it without those things.
It would be nice. It would be nice if you just cruise through, no obstacles, everything you just put out there as goals. They just is like, oh yeah, of course, I put it out there, achieved it, no big deal. I think the obstacles is actually what makes the joy so sweet when you actually accomplish the goal. It's not that it was easy. It's actually the most difficult goals you have in front of you are the ones that are most magical because you overcame
Yeah.
all the
Yeah.
crazy
Yeah.
stuff
And
on the way to get
in
there.
goal setting, it's a little phrase that says, there's no low hanging fruit. Like if you can just go pick that goal and accomplish it, then you really don't have the satisfaction of accomplishing. So it's got to
Mhm.
be challenging enough. And that's where the attainable comes in. If I want to walk a mile and that's easy for me, well, that's really not, that's not a goal that's going to, so finding that sweet spot of challenge. And when I work with clients, I'll ask them, I use a scale, on a scale of 1 to 10, how confident are you that you're going to be able to accomplish this? And if they say 10, I'm like, okay, flag on the play. Maybe it's too easy for you. If they say 5, okay, well, why is it a 5? And then the questions, because so maybe the sweet spot is that 6, 7, maybe 7.5. That you're confident, but you're going to have to stretch for it a little bit.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think we don't often ask ourselves that simple question. Hey, 1 to 10, how confident am I in this goal? And if you're up there in that 9, 10, you know, I think that's where some people then don't even hit it. They'll be like, I'm so confident in this that they relax, they chill. They're like, I did what I did this year. I'm gonna do it again next year. And I'm confident that I can do it because I've already proven it. And then they don't do it. Maybe because they just get into this kind of lull of, not doing the actions. They just think it'll be produced for them. Um, which Julia, I want to hit on this too, because organization is one of the elements in the Savor method here, which has to do with stress. And stress is in real estate, it is just ever present. It's ever present in our pursuit for our business, how we harmonize our business with our life, and also just with our clients. Because every client that is buying or selling is experiencing some level of stress that they have not experienced before. And now the weight is on the realtor to try to help diffuse that stress. So how does a busy professional start to look at the organization of their world in this element here to try to reduce stress as much as possible? I know it's not going to go away, and there's acute and there's chronic. We acute's good, chronic's bad. So maybe first attacking, like, how do we attack this potential chronic stress with organizations so we can avoid burnout?
Well, so this beautifully ties into where we started with that self-care is strategic, it's not selfish. The next kind of, as we're kind of exploring this, I would ask, and we talked about this with the Women's Leadership Council in real estate, what maybe are some porous boundaries that you have that maybe you need to tighten up a little bit. And there are, different kind of boundaries: financial, time, communication, physical. What boundary would benefit you, and how can you make that happen? So when I posed this to this full room of realtors, they several of them shared some boundaries that they implement, and it helps manage the stress. Is it perfect? No, because we're bought a home recently, we're renovating, stressful, we're contemplating another home, stressful. And the realtors pick up their phone almost 24/7, Saturday, Sunday. So looking at what boundary is going to be best for the person and then helping them implement it. So maybe it is you put your phone in the other room at night, or you have a response when people ask you to do one more thing. I can't. So if you're the kind of person that says, yes, I can do that, or yes, I'll help you, and you realize that this is contributing to your burnout, how, first recognizing it and then finding some strategies. And one of the things that I ask people to do is have a back pocket response if you need to. Have the response at the ready. That, I can't responsibly commit to this right now, but check back with me, in a week. So they have the response when their boundaries are pushed. They know how it's at the ready. Does that
Yeah.
mean it's perfect? No, but you're going to have a lot more success if you have a plan in play.
One of my favorites is when you find someone like this and they're like, but I'm a yes person. Like I just always say yes. I'm like, are you ready to be done with that? Like, are we like, as long as you own that you're this yes person, that you are going to consistently burn yourself out. You're going to consistently stress yourself out. There's a great, Matt and I are reading a book right now, and one of the pieces in it says, if you don't set boundaries for yourself, society will impose their boundaries upon you. And it's one of those, like, you have to be so careful in protecting yourself at all times, because your phone will ring at 9 o'clock at night and you have the choice to answer it if you don't have boundaries set upon that. And so really important. I love that you went there. Of you're
So
in the
first,
control of this.
a little bit of a, let's take a look. Let's see where I might need to tighten up my boundaries to protect my energy so that I can show up top notch when I show up. And that, when you say yes to everything, are you really saying yes to the important stuff?
Yeah. Yeah. And you're not, probably, most of the time, which is, I mean, I love the boundaries thing because I think that is one of the toughest places for realtors, as you said. Oh, I set boundaries in terms of when I work, but then you call them and they're answering their phone. They're like, I thought this was a boundary for you. What do you, oh, but it's you, but it's
Yeah,
you. It's like,
yeah.
okay, we need to start addressing that. So if you're listening out there and you're thinking, how do I start to capture some time back for myself? Start right there with your boundaries on your time and your availability, because opening it up does not open up your business. It just opens up yourself to being taken advantage of in a way. And really, you're doing it to yourself. I think when people are doing that. And so I
When
love
I
that, really.
the question that I opened the workshop with the realtors, would you leave your house with your phone at 20% and not have access to a charger for the rest of the day? You wouldn't. You wouldn't leave your house without a charger and your phone at 20%, especially in the world of real estate. So how do you charge your own battery?
Mhm.
And that's where, it all ties back into self-care is strategic. It's not selfish.
Yeah. Oh man. I'm a big fan of all of this stuff. I mean, I could go on. I do want to touch on the activity thing because movement is kind of like one of my favorite things in the world. We actually built it into, we have this 4-part framework called the Daily Ignition, which are 4 simple things for people to help start their days: gratitude, positive input, bringing, reading or, positive music into their mind, purposeful visualization. You talked about putting your goals up somewhere, and then intentional movement, moving our body, right? And so I think we see a lot of people make the excuse of, I don't have time for that. Movement sometimes becomes the last thing on their list to do, when we've seen the research and everything that shows not only does it help with your overall health, helps with your mindset and all these things. So if someone were to start to say, well, okay, yeah, movement's great for health, but like, you're talking to them about how important it is for their personal lives and their business, like, where do you start with people on approaching that topic of movement, knowing that it is different for all people, because some people are good at it and some people are, it may not be.
Mm-hmm. Well, I like to think of activity. There's purposeful exercise where you're going to take a spin class or you're going for your 5K run. So purposeful exercise. But there's also activity. So if you can kind of frame it as exercise and activity, and this is where some of the science of, fitness and movement comes in, is maybe for you, it's not a dedicated, but maybe it's gardening. That is what is
Hmm.
called NEAT energy, non-exercise active thermogenics. And really, a person who is higher in their NEAT energy expenditure tends to be a healthier physiologically than sometimes a person who does their 1 hour dedicated workout and then sits for the rest of the day. So, a little bit of a reframe it's great if you have somebody who loves exercise. I mean, it's great if you know somebody that and they come in and they love meditating, and yoga is, they stretch and they do it all. It's the challenge of, kind of that person that doesn't like it. And so reframing, a walk is very doable.
Mm-hmm.
The positive benefits in terms of increased creativity, the increase in mindset, or better mindset. So kind of helping people maybe reframe and find what works for them. If you are, I had a client who does not like exercise, but said she liked to bowl. Okay. It's not necessarily traditional exercise, but it's moving
Yeah.
and it counts. And there's a social aspect to it. So
I think movement is so underrated. The getting out, physically moving. There's a whole, we see it online right now where people talk about gym strength and actual like real strength. And I never thought about it as, you have an hour in the gym and then the rest of the day you might be sitting around, and you're putting on muscle and you look physically fit. There's another side of being physically fit, and a lot of that is just moving. Like I look at my mom, she's 83 years old, and she's like, 3 walks a day with her dog, and that's what she's consistent with all the time. And a lot of it I look at it and go like,
yeah,
and that's
yeah,
why you are as
yeah,
healthy as you are. You just
yep.
have this routine that you put yourself into. So I love how you said even gardening. Why
Well,
not? Like it's just moving.
if the blue zones are, have you heard of blue zones?
Mm-hmm.
They're
yeah.
pockets globally that have longevity, and it's natural movement. It's not a spin class. It's the natural movement, like you said, Garrett, walking your dog or gardening or, Matt, I like to think of Charleston as a little bit of a blue zone, except with cocktails and great restaurants.
Yeah.
Which is not necessarily part of a blue zone, but
Right.
in Charleston, people walk everywhere, or they bike everywhere, and meeting people in the street or around the parks is very natural. So in terms of activity, what will work for you, and maybe it's not traditional, and it is important to move your body to be healthy. So.
Well, I've seen some studies on these blue zones, and there's a lot of times they end up like at noon, where it's like, this is all where we sit and drink wine today. Like we're all going to have a glass of wine together, and then we're going to go off and do this. So I think it's interesting how like we interpret certain things too as good or bad or help for longevity. And a lot of it, if you look at it, it's like, yes, they're having a glass of wine. Yes, if you follow them around for the day, though, they are constantly moving.
And now they're connecting with
constantly going
others.
places.
Yeah, and now they're connecting with others. You think
I
about
think community is one of those biggest things that people overlook, right? Julie, this is Garrett, go ahead. Sorry.
Is there I was going to say, is there anything that you want to share with the community and the because we've covered a lot of different kind of directions here, and I love where we've gone, because I do find in most people that come into our world who are struggling or trying to figure out how they're going to get to where they want to go, this is the most overlooked path. They're looking at who should I be calling, who should I be writing notes to, who should I be taking out to lunch, and they very rarely look first at, well, how am I taking care of myself? And so I love everywhere we've gone. If there's like one thing you can say, like, I want to make sure the audience
I
hears
think
this
it's
before we kind of
important
put a
every
bow on
once in a
this,
while
what would
to
you want to share,
assess,
Julie?
where am I at? What do I want? What do I need? And that is constantly evolving and iterations. So every once in a while, check in with, how is my nutrition right now? Am I getting the protein that I need? Am I getting the fiber that I need? Do I need to, how am I move my body right now? What is working? What is not? So taking that acronym and checking in with that on a regular basis. And I call it, your recipe for an ideal day. Look at all of that. What is my ideal day? Now, does that mean it's going to happen? No, but if you can say, this is an ideal day for me, then you can actively seek the things and make them, you can actively try and integrate them into your day, your week, your month, and assessing that on a regular basis, because it does change.
I love that. That's so great. Making your ideal day.
The the assessing and circling back around, I think it's important, and I want to get your opinion on this, of like having a scheduled routine where you do check in on things, a scheduled time where you kind of sit down and say, okay, where am I? Because in society, I find the pace of the life that we're living and what we're doing, you can blink sometimes and 3 months has passed. You can, you feel like you just checked in, and all of a sudden you look back at your notes and you're like, oh my gosh, that was at the beginning of the year when I last looked at that. Do you have kind of a routine that you'd be like, and I guess it's different for everything you're kind of doing in your life, but kind of a normal pace to get into, of like every quarter you should have a sit down with yourself and kind of go, what, like,
Well,
where do
again,
I
I try
stand?
and
Is
work
it a
with people
monthly
in a
thing? Is
way
it a
that works
weekly
best
thing?
with them,
What
but
do you find
research does
best?
support like a 90-day, and I'm sure you guys know there's a 90-day goal frame. So chunking things to 90 days. It's long enough that you can make some change, but it's short enough that it doesn't feel like it's going on forever. And I actively do it. It's a quarterly journal, and I sit down and I assess what's working well, what isn't working well, what do I want to work on next quarter. The other thing is, I love the symbolic restart of the new year. And sometimes when I had school age kids, it was kind of September was kind of that regroup, re-energize, reassess. The other thing that I think is really one of the most powerful exercises, and it comes from positive psychology, is the letter to your future best self.
Yeah.
Is this?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. We're very
Yeah,
familiar
yeah,
with that.
yeah. And every once in a while, whatever that is, time frame for you, you sit down and you do it. And it's, I think it's kind of like the push up of positive psychology, because it's not necessarily easy, but it's very effective. And
Yeah.
done well, you set your course for meaning and purpose.
I like that. Yeah. We used to be affiliated with a training company that was the thing
I
that
love
was
it.
always done on the last day, is writing that letter to your future self 1 year out. Um, Super powerful. Julie, gosh, this has been so great. Thank you so much for sharing all this wonderful stuff. If people want to go follow you, learn more about you, where's the best place for them to find you?
It's pretty straightforward. It's my name, Julie Kaminski. That's my website, www.juliekaminski.com. Instagram is at Julie Kaminski. LinkedIn, Julie Kaminski. And I've got some really wonderful free resources that are available on my website. Kind of walks you through the recipe for your ideal day is there, and then it kind of walks you through what you do with it afterwards.
Awesome.
And if you get on my newsletter, there's usually a free resource that goes out at least once a month. I did one on, creating community and social health. We'll do one for mindful eating as the holidays approach, and how do you, how do you manage, the what I like to call Hallow Thanksmas Eve, which has started already and goes right through, kind of January 2nd, where your calendar fills up with social events, and how do you manage your health, and that. So there are a lot of free resources if you get on the mailing list too.
I love it. I love it. Well, Julie, thank you so much. Matt, thank you for introducing us to Julie. You guys got a chance to meet at a conference here a
Well,
while
good luck
back,
with
and
your
that's what
planning for
brought you into
next
our
year.
world.
And
And I'm
thank you for
grateful that we got to
having me.
spend
It
some
was
time
a real
together.
pleasure to be able to talk with both of you. And,
Yes.
as you can tell, I love this work, and I think it's really an honor and to be able to walk along people in their journey and be able to talk about it with you this morning is definitely a highlight that I will savor.
Awesome. We will as well. And guys, if you do want to check out planning, speaking of
Oh,
which, it's never too late to jump in. We have started our sessions, but you can come join us. Just go to 10tenths.co/GPS to join us for that, and you'll hop right into our community and be a part of everything that we got going on. Garrett.
yep. For all of you listening, if you want to come join us for that, that'd be amazing. If you are listening to this on Apple, if you're listening to this on Spotify, come check us out also on YouTube. We'd love to have you jump into that world, subscribe. We have lots and lots of videos on there. And with that being said, if you want to come check out our community, please do that. You can download our app, and that'll get you into business planning, get you into all kinds of stuff that you can come and be a part of. So with that being said, thank you, everybody. Thank you, Julie. Thank you, Matt. And everybody have an amazing day. Have an incredible day.